Hey, what's up guys? JB here. So as expected, we did get Queen Macherie this week, and we're going to be getting her Vision card Sheraton next week. And we're really entering this final phase here as we're leading up to the 2.5-year anniversary. I wanted to do a little bit something different today, and we're going to just do a quick sort of focused video, kind of looking at some different ideas and builds that I've put together for the new unit Queen Macherie. Now I have already done a deep dive into this unit that I did a few months ago when she first launched in JP, so if you're looking for something more detailed and kind of looking at her skills and abilities, I will put a link to that video above. But today I've got 4 different builds to show you and kind of looking at some different scenarios where I think that she could work pretty well. And I will be putting a link to each of the builds in the description below so that you can check out the finer details. So with that said guys, let's get right into it. Before we check the builds though guys, I wanted to quickly reiterate a point that I made in my first video, and that's that I think that there's really only one truly viable builds, in terms of the passives and counters today for Macherie, at least with how her passives stand right now. And that's going to be her main job passive, which is the Tribute of the Silver Wolf, then her speed cast passive from Time Mage, which gives her some enhanced casting speed. And then in terms of her counter, it's going to be a no-brainer, go for that one from her new unique job. It's called Preemptive Royal Reprehension. It is a preemptive counter, which is very nice. It has nice range on it, so that is the one that you're going to want to equip in pretty much any scenario. All right, guys, so this is build 1. This is going to be a double Bruiser comp, and here I'm going to bring Oberon and Noctis alongside Macherie. And one of the key pieces of utility that she brings is that she can imbue Protect onto herself and the party. And that's definitely going to help Earth double down on one of the things they're really good at today, which is going up against physically focused teams. And that's just going to make them even better at doing that. Now for the items here on Macherie, I am using a piece of equipment that we actually don't have access to yet, and that is the Feeds Lucerne +6. And I do actually really like this one once it gets that upgrade. It adds some nice debuff resistance against slash imperils, which, there are actually quite a few slash imperils out there in the game. You think of units like Esther, Astrius, and Bold Leela. So I do think that debuff resistance combined with what I have in the Trust Stones makes her heavily resistant to those imperils, and I do really like that combination. Now one of my favorite TMRs for Queen Macherie is actually Dark Fina's shoes here. Not only because of the nice base stats that it has on it, but it also has a really nice effect from Macherie, which could reduce her skill activation time even further and gives her some nice magic res penetration, which she doesn't have innately. Now, I don't think that you'd want to use that effect in lieu of something like her personal re-raise ability, because that is really key to her survivability. Macherie is really a 2-buff style unit, as we've seen, with others, including Dark Fina herself. So in that regard, the TMR may be more of just a stat stick here, unless you're actually going for something specific with the effect that it would bring. Now that said, I have built the team here a little more all around defensively. Of course I always have my trifecta vision card set up with the single target and area resists, and then I do have an agility card here as well that comes packaged on the Eleficaris vision card. Now I will say Queen Macherie getting tacked onto the limited bestowed ability of the Dreams of Heroism card that I'm using here is an extremely nice buff for her and something that I was hoping that she would get. I do think that makes this card a must-have, for her main slot in many different parties. It's going to give her a 5 flat agility in that limited bestowed, which she really wants. And you do really want to pump up her agility, especially for autoplay. As we were just talking about, she really wants to get off 2 buffs early in battle. And in this case, that would be her Protect buff, onto Oberon here. Of course, Noctis does bring his own Protect. And then after that, you'd want to get her re-raise online. Now, Macherie's Esper and Sub-Vision card here are the forthcoming Sheraton, which we will be getting next week. And one of the interesting things about Sheraton is that it's our first Esper that actually gives area resist on the board for that Esper, which is very nice for Macherie's survivability. Now in terms of the Trust Stones here, I do have my standard defensive loadout here on the left side, but on the right side I have built something specific here for Macherie. Of course I do want to get that cast time as low as I can, so I do have that skill activation reduction there. And then adding to that, I do have some various modifiers here to increase her damage, notably that Earth Attack and Strike Attack are both going to amp up the damage of her Drain Strike ability. Now one cool thing about this team is that Macherie's Limit Burst with the Earth Imperil does stack with Oberon's Limit Burst with its All Elements Imperil. And of course both of those abilities are area of effect as well. So the potential is there to do some absolutely crazy damage if you were able to get both of those off in succession, even against a Wind counterpick team. Of course, Wind is so strong right now with its long range and high bulk that I really would never want to face them, with this particular team here. But if you were faced with that matchup, there is the potential there that if things lined up with the Limit Burst, you could definitely pick off a unit or two with that combo. All right, on to build 2 here, guys, and this is going to be sort of a standard tank and spank setup with a couple of mages in tow. And I'm going to have my man Moraga leading the way. You know, of course, Moraga is the free Earth Selection Quest unit. He's not really the greatest tank out there and not one that I would be looking to use in many situations. But I think with this particular setup, you know, he actually could be pretty decent. And what I'm going to do here is Macherie is going to imbue him with Protect, and then I'm going to have Luel using Marimore's TMR, and she's going to give Moraga Shell. And those effects combined with his innate bulk and immortal spirits, I think actually do make him a decent enough tank, especially if you're going up against more physically focused teams, because, you know, that is really his bread and butter. He does have very high defense. If it was a longer map and you had time to pull it off, you know, you may even be able to get Luel in here to do her Earth Calling buff for some single target resistance onto the party as well. Now, in terms of the equipment here, I did change Macherie's armor from the previous build. You know, since we do have a tank that's going to be grabbing aggro, I think I can afford to go a little bit more offensive here. And I am opting to use Terra's Ribbon for the magical Maneater effect. Now, in terms of the vision cards, I have made some adjustments here as well. I am using Golem on Moraga to sort of amp up the HP of the party, make us a little bit more survivable. It does bring in some lightning resist there as well, so I can flex as sort of a lightning counter pick if this was sort of an attack-focused team. This build isn't completely focused as being anti-lightning, but, you know, it actually could work well enough. Now, another thing I want to point out here is I am using the Lich vision card on the secondary slot of Macherie, which if you actually don't have this one yet, you know, definitely grab it in our next raid revival. And I do actually think this one is pretty good if you have a couple of mages in the party. It actually has a nice mix of magic attack and slash resist on it. And specifically for an Earth mage party, I do think it's actually better than using something like Solidus, you know, especially in that secondary slot. You know, so those are the main changes that I have here for this build. I have kept things consistent here with the Trust Stone loadout with the HP and agility sets. And again, you know, since Macherie doesn't have an agility passive available to her, I actually do think the agility Trust Stone set is one of the better ones you can use on her, you know, just to get her agility as high as possible and make sure that you can pull off a couple of different buffs in an auto environment. So that is the tank build, guys. You know, I was actually playing around with an alternate variation of this using Kilfei as the tank in lieu of Moraga, and I actually think that that could be a pretty fun party. And I actually think that that could work pretty well, especially if it's an anti-lightning team, so maybe something to play around with and test out yourself. All right, build 3, guys, and this is going to be an accuracy-focused build, and more specifically, a light evade hunting build. Now, in terms of the units I'm going to bring along with Macherie, I am using Zazan and Oberon, and I am bringing in Zazan here because I wanted to showcase something a little bit different from the Bruiser build that we looked at earlier, but of course, Noctis could work great in this setup as well. Now, in this build, I am going to feature Marimore's TMR once again, and I'm going to have that on Zazan, and that's for 2 reasons. You know, of course, I do want to have Shell on him, you know, going up against Elena, for example. But the other reason is to sort of keep him back, you know, otherwise he's going to fly in, you know, way ahead of everybody else and sort of get himself focused down. So the idea here is that Zazan is going to imbue Shell onto Macherie, she's going to imbue him with Protect, and then they're both going to move in, you know, all the while Oberon is going to be doing his flank, you know, over on the slot. And he'll be over there, you know, putting up his barrier and sort of doing his flank route. And that's kind of the general idea that I have for this build. You know, I think it could actually work out pretty well. Now, I have pumped up the accuracy here. You know, I'm actually going to be using the Platinum Mace this time instead of the new Punisher Mace. And I have the +6 version here because that has a 10 accuracy passive that it brings along. And I have paired that here with the Silver Rim Spectacles for the nice accuracy base stat that they bring. Now for the vision cards this time, I am using the Solitary Lion on Zazan, and that's to bring in some accuracy into my main slot cards. And I do have the new Earth Vision card, Rise of the Immortal, in his sub-slot, and that's going to give the party a little bit of luck as well. Now, Zazan and Oberon both are going to be over 400% accuracy in this build, and Macherie is just going to be a tick under that at 389%. Remember though that Macherie does have a 30% hit modifier on one of her skills. So all 3 units will have a very nice chance of hitting even the heaviest of evade units. If you wanted to though, you know, you could amp up Macherie's accuracy even a little bit further. You could use an Esper like Ramu or Typhon. If you didn't have Marimore's TMR, another adjustment that you could make is to use Locke's TMR on Zazan, and that's going to increase the luck of the party even further. Now, another big change I've made here in the build is to the Trust Stone sets, and this time I'm using luck and accuracy sets. And I have changed around some of the passives here as well, just to be a little bit more heavily focused against that light team and some of the things that they're able to do. And I do think that this team actually can be pretty effective in this purpose, you know, for evade hunting, you know, especially if it's a tankless evade team. All right, last build that I have for you guys here today, and this one is going to be more specifically for a Guild Wars defense type scenario. And honestly, with how powerful wind is right now, I don't think that I would use earth on defense whatsoever, with one exception, and that's going to be an elemental trap type setup. And maybe this is something that you could look to use, after the 2.5-year anniversary, once we get Final Fantasy XIII's Lightning and Orlando as well from Final Fantasy Tactics. And if we really are seeing a lot of lightning attackers at that point, you could make some adjustments to this build and maybe even bring in a second earth unit behind Celes, somebody like Oberon or Noctis there instead of Astrius. But let's take a look at this one as I have it here, and the idea would be that I'd be flashing Celes in my slot 1 defense, and the goal there is to really try and bait a mono lightning attacker to come at me. And of course I'm going to have Macherie laying in wait there to be sort of the surprise factor, much in the same way we've seen people use Oberon in the past. Now I do actually think that Macherie could be even more effective than Oberon in that role for 2 main reasons. She has so much area of effect damage at her disposal. And the second reason is that we know that Esther is weak to magic damage and that her barrier is actually physical damage only. So that's going to be the idea here, guys. We have Macherie using rainbow effective vision cards this time around. And it's a similar vision card loadout that I would be using on somebody like Velis, if they were on this team. And that's going to be Winter Holiday Party for the area resist in the main slot, and the Black Rose Helena card in the secondary slot. Now, if you don't have the Winter Holiday Party card, I really suggest that you pick this one up during the Christmas event this year. It is very, very useful, for setting up these kinds of trap teams and just for rainbow effective teams in general. Now, the other rainbow card I am going to be using in the party here is that Golem Vision card on Celes' secondary. And of course, that's going to be for the HP to the party as well as the Lightning Resist that will go onto Macherie. And Lightning Resist is really the theme of this build. Because I am anticipating a Lightning attacker, I have heavily focused on Lightning Resist for the team to really try and shore up that weakness. Of course, we know the Agility card for the water element does have 20% Lightning Resist on it, which helps quite a bit. I am using the Earthen Ring from our tower events on Macherie as her equipment, and that's going to get her 20 lightning resist. And then I am also picking up some additional lightning resist from the Espers and from the Trust Stones as well. And it definitely would take some dedication, in terms of farming the lightning resist passives if you wanted to copy this build exactly. But I think, as long as you had at a minimum the HP set bonus for the all element resist, I think that the team could be effective enough. Now, the other really nice synergy here with this party is that Celes has her magic burst ability that she really loves to use, and she's going to be dropping the area resist of the enemy party by 20 when she uses that. Now, Macherie is then going to be able to follow up and do massive damage with her limit burst and other large AoEs that she has. So I think the damage potential there is actually very, very nice with this team. So I think in that regard, this defense definitely has the potential to be pretty solid and one that could be put in a rotation, and one that I actually look forward to solving once people start using it. Alright guys, so that is the build video. Again, I was trying something out a little bit different today. This was sort of a more dedicated build guide, something that I've never tried before. So let me know what you guys think of this format, and maybe I'll do more of them in the future if people like it. And of course, if you did enjoy it, hit that like button. It really helps me out with the YouTube algorithm. And if you like what I'm doing here on the channel, hit that subscribe button if you want to see more. And that's really all I have to say for today. So as always, stay safe out there, and I'll see you guys in the next one.